The box smelled like dust and old paper, the kind of scent that clung to forgotten attics and half-buried memories. I had been cleaning out my late father's study, sorting through ledgers and journals stacked in crooked towers, when my hand brushed against a leather-bound notebook buried beneath contracts. At first, I thought it was one of Dad's. The cover was scuffed, its spine weak, as if someone had opened it 100 times but always closed it quickly. When I flipped the first page, though, my heart froze. The handwriting wasn't my father's neat scrawl, it was Claire's. Claire Evans. My childhood friend, my closest confidant. The girl who grew up across the street, who used to share peanut butter sandwiches with me at recess, who sat cross-legged in my room helping me dream up futures bigger than our small town could hold. Now she was something else entirely. The youngest CEO of Evans Corp., a titan of the corporate world, commanding boardrooms and headlines like she was born to rule them. I should have closed the diary. Should have tucked it away, pretended I'd never seen it. But curiosity dug its claws in, sharp and merciless. The first entry was dated when we were barely 12. Daniel doesn't even realize how easy it is. If I steer him now, he'll follow me forever. He thinks we're just best friends, but he'll thank me when I make him my perfect partner. Not in love, not yet, but in position. He'll be my anchor, my shield, my story. The world loves a power couple, and he'll play the role, even if he doesn't know it. My breath caught. The words blurred as my eyes skimmed over them again and again, as if repetition would soften the blow. She wasn't joking. This wasn't a childish fantasy. The next pages bled with strategy. Which sports team I should join so I'd look reliable. Which clubs would build a leader's image. Even notes about the girls I liked. Discourage him. She's not good enough. He belongs to my script. My stomach churned. All those little moments I brushed off, the way she'd convinced me to drop soccer and join debate, how she talked me out of confessing to Emma Torres in 9th grade, the way she always inserted herself into my choices, they weren't coincidences. They were moves. Carefully plotted steps in a game I never agreed to play. I sank into my father's old leather chair, the diary trembling in my hands. Has my whole life been orchestrated? I remembered Claire at 16, telling me with that confident smile, "You'd look better in business casual, Daniel. You should ditch the hoodies." I thought she was teasing. I thought she cared. I remembered her hand tugging me away from the bonfire party senior year, whispering, "You don't need them. You've got me." Back then, I believed it was loyalty. Now, I wasn't so sure. My chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. The girl I trusted most, the one person I believed saw me, really saw me, had been shaping me like clay in her hands. Not for my sake. Not for us. For her image. A laugh bubbled up, bitter and hollow. I let the diary fall onto the desk, its pages splayed open like an accusation. For years, I'd told myself Claire and I had something unbreakable. That no matter how high she rose, she'd always be the girl who sat beside me on the swings, daring me to jump higher. But the truth was right here, inked in her elegant handwriting. Our bond wasn't unbreakable. It wasn't even real. It was scaffolding she built for her empire. And me? I was the foundation. The fake boyfriend. The perfect accessory. I pressed my palms into my eyes, fighting the sting. Anger and grief tangled like barbed wire in my chest. How much of me was even mine anymore? Did I make my choices, or did I just follow the path she'd sketched years ago in these pages? The silence of the study was deafening. Dust motes drifted in the beam of a dying sunset, settling over the desk, over the diary, over my father's nameplate. I clenched my fists. Whatever Claire had written, whatever she'd plotted since childhood, one thing was certain, I wasn't her pawn anymore. Not now. Not ever again. The diary sat on my desk all night, a silent parasite feeding on my thoughts. I barely slept, tossing between anger and disbelief. Every time I shut my eyes, the inked words crawled back into my skull, "He belongs to my script." Morning sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it didn't feel like a new day. It felt like a spotlight exposing every memory I thought was pure. And suddenly, I couldn't help retracing the strings Claire had been pulling for years. I was 12 when she first tugged one. I remember walking into the gym, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor, a soccer ball tucked under my arm. I just made the local league, my first real taste of belonging. But Claire was waiting by the bleachers, arms crossed, expression cool. "You'll waste your time there," she said. "Soccer won't matter when you're older. You need something that makes you stand out. Debate teams better. Colleges love it. I laughed, thinking she was just being bossy. I like soccer. You like winning, she countered, eyes sharp. And you'll win bigger with me in debate. By the end of that week, I'd quit soccer. Claire stood beside me at the debate club sign-up sheet, her smile triumphant. At the time, I thought she was just confident. I never realized she was mapping my life out in advance. Then came freshman year. Emma Torres. God, Emma. She had this laugh that lit up the hallway, the kind of sound that made you forget the weight of your textbooks and the smell of cafeteria pizza. I liked her, more than liked her. For weeks, I worked up the nerve to confess. Claire noticed. Of course she noticed. One night, I told her straight out, I think I'm gonna ask Emma out. Her face didn't even flicker. Don't. Why not? She's not good enough for you, Claire said, voice like steel under silk. She doesn't understand ambition. She'll distract you, slow you down. You're meant for bigger things, Daniel. I remember staring at her, confused. And you decide that? She softened then, gave me that smile she always used when she wanted me to cave. I just care about you. Trust me. And like a fool, I did. I never asked Emma out. Weeks later, she was dating someone else. And I told myself it didn't matter, because Claire said it wasn't right. But in the quiet corners of my heart, it stung. And then came the business seminars. Sophomore year, Claire dragged me to one of her father's corporate luncheons. I sat stiff in a blazer too big for me while grown men in suits talked about quarterly earnings and mergers. I didn't belong there. My heart ached for Dad's bookstore, the dusty shelves, the smell of old novels stacked to the ceiling. But Claire leaned over, whispering, "Pay attention. You'll need this someday." I nodded, even as my chest tightened, even as I knew I'd rather be lost in the aisles of Wright's books, cataloging rare editions. Now, sitting in my father's study, those strings were visible. Every choice I thought was mine, debate team, my so-called focus on academics, even the love I never confessed, they were all tangled in her hand. She'd been weaving me into her web since we were kids. But underneath the anger, something else stirred. A memory of Dad's voice, warm and steady. Books are more than ink on paper, son. They're bridges. Every story connects us to something bigger. Keep that alive. Wright's books had been his kingdom, modest but magical. People didn't just come for books, they came for belonging. He wanted me to inherit that legacy, not as a burden but as a gift. And maybe that's where Claire had miscalculated. She thought shaping me into her accessory was my destiny. But my real inheritance wasn't her stage, it was Dad's shelves, his vision, his belief that stories mattered more than status. I closed the diary, my hands steadier than they'd been last night. Yes, Claire's plotting had shaped me. But it wouldn't define me. Not anymore. I wasn't her project. I wasn't her fake boyfriend. I was Daniel Wright, son of a bookseller. And I'd rebuild his empire my way, even if I had to tear down every string she'd tied around me to do it. The lobby of Evans Corp looked like another planet. Marble floors gleamed under the glare of chandeliers shaped like inverted crowns. The reception desk curved like a throne, manned by assistants in tailored black suits, their smiles rehearsed to perfection. I tugged at my jacket sleeve, feeling the weight of a borrowed world. Dad's bookstore never had polished marble, never had hushed elevators carrying you to dizzying heights. It had dust, crooked shelves, a bell that jingled when customers walked in. That world was gone the second I stepped through these doors. This was Claire's kingdom. And I was a prop. Daniel. Claire's voice rang across the lobby. Heads turned as she descended the staircase like royalty arriving at court. Her white blazer fit her like it was stitched from power itself, her heels clicking in sharp rhythm. She reached me, looping her arm through mine as if we'd rehearsed it. Perfect timing. The board's waiting. The board? My voice cracked like I was still 15. She didn't answer, just smiled at me like I was her well-trained accessory. The elevator whisked us upward, glass walls revealing the city sprawling below. Claire was radiant, calm, already in control. My palms, by contrast, were slick with sweat. When the doors opened, a long mahogany table stretched across the room, ringed by men and women in suits. Shareholders. Executives. Sharks. Claire didn't hesitate. She pulled me forward, her voice steady and clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Daniel Wright, my fiancé." The word hit me like a brick to the ribs. Fiancé. Gasps, polite applause, murmurs rippled around the table. I felt their eyes on me, weighing me like currency. I wasn't Daniel Wright, the bookstore owner's son. I was Claire Evans's chosen partner. Her grip tightened on my arm, her nails sharp against my sleeve, as if daring me to contradict her. Together, she continued smoothly, we represent not just strength and leadership, but stability. Evans Corp doesn't just thrive, it endures. And Daniel embodies those values. I opened my mouth, the word no forming in the back of my throat. But under the chandelier's harsh glow, with 24 eyes locked on me, I froze. I felt like a mannequin, dressed in borrowed confidence. That's when I noticed him. Marcus Hale. He leaned back in his chair, one hand adjusting his cufflinks, the other resting lazily on the table. His smile wasn't polite. It was sharp, the kind of smile that cut. When Claire finished her speech, applause filled the room again. Marcus was the only one who didn't clap. Instead, he tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. After the meeting broke, Claire whisked me toward a smaller lounge where champagne glasses waited on silver trays. Conversations buzzed around us, shareholders toasting to the perfect power couple. My skin crawled with every false congratulation. And then Marcus appeared. Fiancé, His voice was smooth, but there was an edge beneath it. His eyes lingered on me before sliding to Claire. Funny, I don't remember seeing an engagement notice. Claire's smile was seamless. It's private. We'll announce formally when the time is right. Marcus raised his glass, his gaze never leaving mine. Of course. Privacy. But I wonder, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. Does Daniel know what he signed up for? My chest tightened. For a moment, I thought about answering honestly, no, I don't. I never signed up for any of this. But Claire's hand was still on my arm, her grip possessive, unyielding. Marcus chuckled, clinking his glass against mine before walking away. But his eyes promised something dangerous. He'd seen through me. He knew I didn't belong here. And worse, he could use that. As the evening dragged on, Claire played her role flawlessly, smiling, networking, weaving me into her performance. I laughed when expected, nodded when introduced, but inside, I was burning. When we finally left, the city lights reflected off her car's tinted windows. Claire exhaled, satisfied. That went well, fiancé. My voice cracked. Claire, what the hell was that? She glanced at me, calm as ever. You're mine, Daniel. You've always been mine. The world just needed to see it. The word struck deeper than I wanted to admit. For years, I thought she was my anchor. Now I realized I was her trophy. I turned to the window, fists clenched tight. And in the reflection, I saw Marcus's smirk lingering in my mind. He'd seen my cracks. And I had no doubt he'd find a way to drive them open. The gala glittered like something out of a fairy tale. If fairy tales came dressed in Armani suits and stock price whispers. Crystal chandeliers dripped gold light across a ballroom filled with polished faces, the air thick with perfume and ambition. The kind of place where every smile was a transaction, and every toast hit a knife. Claire thrived in it. She glided through the crowd like she owned not just the company but the city itself, her laugh timed perfectly, her hand grazing my arm every time a camera flashed. To the outside world, we were flawless, the couple of Evans Corp, young and untouchable. But under the weight of 1,000 stares, I felt suffocated. The tux strangled me, the champagne burned in my throat, and every time someone congratulated me on being lucky to have Claire, it was another chain tightening around my neck. I needed air. So I slipped out toward the side corridor, away from the music, away from the flashing cameras. The hallway was dim, lined with mirrors that reflected pieces of me I barely recognized anymore. That's when I heard voices. Claire's. And his. Marcus Hale. I froze by the corner, their words drifting like smoke. Smart move tonight, Marcus was saying, his voice smooth but mocking. Bringing him here, parading him around. Shareholders love a pretty picture. Claire's reply was low, steady. It's not just a picture. It's about stability. He makes me look untouchable. Marcus chuckled, the sound sharp. Come on, Claire. He's just a pawn, isn't he? Silence. A long, suffocating silence. I pressed my back against the wall, my chest hammering. Any second now, she'd deny it. She'd laugh it off. Tell him he was wrong. Tell him I wasn't just a piece on her board. But her voice came soft, almost amused. Every queen needs her pawn, Marcus. The world tilted. My breath caught, shallow and ragged. It felt like the floor cracked open beneath me, and I was falling, falling through every memory I'd clung to, every laugh, every late-night secret, every whispered promise that we'd always have each other. All of it, hollow. All of it, a script. I stumbled into the corridor, my shoes scraping against the marble. Their voices stopped. Claire appeared first, her expression slipping from surprise to composure in a heartbeat. Daniel. But the words tore out of me, louder than the ballroom music beyond the doors. A pawn. That's what I am to you. Gasps echoed from nearby, waiters, a few guests lingering in the hall, phones already raised like vultures. Claire's mask wavered, but only for a moment. Daniel, it's not. Don't. My voice shook, but the anger inside steadied it. Don't you dare stand there and pretend this is anything but a performance. I'm not your prop, Claire. Not your accessory. Not your goddamn pawn. Marcus smirked, sipping his drink, eyes glinting with satisfaction. He didn't need to say a word. His trap had sprung, and I'd walked right into it. I yanked off the cufflinks Claire had chosen for me, the little silver pieces she'd called, polished, respectable. They clattered against the marble like broken chains. And then I walked. Past the cameras, past the murmuring guests, out into the blinding storm of media flashes at the front entrance. Daniel. Mr. Wright. Trouble in paradise. Are you and Claire still engaged? Is the Evans-Wright partnership falling apart? The questions came like bullets, lights exploding in my face. For once, I didn't flinch. I just kept moving, each step heavier but freer than the last. By the time the cool night air hit me, my chest was raw, my hands shaking. I had just shattered the illusion Claire had spent years building. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing her game anymore. But I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because queens don't forgive pawns who break the board. By morning, the story was everywhere. My phone buzzed non-stop with alerts, headlines flashing like neon wounds. Evans Corp CEO's fiancé storms out of gala, trouble behind closed doors. Daniel Wright, pawn or partner. Inside the Evans engagement scandal. Stocks waver as Evans Corp faces personal drama at the top. Every article had the same photo, me, jaw clenched, storming past reporters while Claire stood frozen in the ballroom doorway. The narrative wasn't about me. It was about her. About Evans Corporation. And I was the liability. When I finally dragged myself to Evans headquarters, the lobby felt colder than before. The same marble floors, the same sharp suits, but this time every receptionist, every assistant, every intern had that flicker in their eyes, curiosity mixed with judgment. I barely had time to breathe before Claire appeared, striding across the lobby in a navy dress that screamed control. Office. Now. Her heels struck the floor like gunshots. I followed, past the whispers, past the curious stares, into a glass-walled corner office that overlooked the city. She slammed the door behind us. What the hell was that last night? Her voice was low, furious, the kind of fury that wasn't about betrayal, it was about exposure. I forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to me. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. Maybe about calling me your pawn. Her jaw tightened. You think this is a game, Daniel? Do you realize what you've done? The stock dropped 3 points overnight. 3. Investors are calling non-stop. Our image, my image, is bleeding because you couldn't keep yourself together. Your image. My voice cracked, but the anger inside steadied it. I stepped closer, meeting her eyes head-on. That's all this has ever been about for you, hasn't it? Not me. Not us. Just the image. She folded her arms, but I saw the flicker in her expression. A crack. You didn't want me, Claire. My voice rose, raw, sharp. You wanted my obedience. You wanted a pretty story to tell shareholders. You never wanted Daniel, you wanted your pawn. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Silence stretched between us, brittle as glass. And then the office door clicked open. Marcus Hale strolled in like he owned the place, a folder tucked under his arm, a smirk playing on his lips. Am I interrupting? Get out, Marcus, Claire snapped. He ignored her, turning to me instead. Quite a scene you caused last night. Brave, really, in its own reckless way. He set the folder on her desk, but his gaze never left me. The problem is, shareholders don't like recklessness. Makes them nervous. And nervous investors pull their money. I clenched my fists. I'm not reckless. I just refuse to be part of her performance. Marcus cut in, his smirk deepening. Yes, we all saw that. The problem is, Daniel, when you publicly humiliate a CEO in front of the press, it doesn't look noble. It looks unstable. The word hit like a slap. Marcus, Claire warned. No, let him finish, I snapped, though my stomach twisted. Marcus leaned casually against the desk, lowering his voice like he was confiding in me. I don't blame you. Being dragged into something you never asked for, living in someone else's shadow, it's enough to break a man. But if I were you, I'd be careful. Right now, every headline is asking one question: who's the weak link in Evans Corp? And I promise you, his smirk widened. They're looking at you. Heat flared in my chest, anger and shame tangled together. Claire finally stepped in, her voice sharp. That's enough, Marcus. But he only straightened, buttoning his jacket. I'm only looking out for the company. If Daniel's presence is hurting us, shareholders deserve to know. He looked at me one last time, eyes glinting with satisfaction. Welcome to the big leagues, Wright. And then he was gone, leaving the door ajar like a wound. I turned back to Claire. Her face was unreadable, her walls already back in place. But mine were cracking. Because Marcus was right about one thing. In this world, perception was everything. And right now, I wasn't Daniel Wright, the man trying to honor his father's bookstore legacy. I was Daniel Wright, the unstable fiancé dragging Evans Corp down. And if I didn't find a way to break free of Claire's grip, and Marcus's game, soon, I wasn't just going to lose myself. I was going to be destroyed. The city outside my apartment never slept. Neon signs blinked through the blinds, car horns wailed somewhere in the distance, and yet the silence in my room felt heavier than ever. I sat hunched at my desk, Dad's old bookstore ledger open in front of me, running my thumb over the ink that had faded with time. His handwriting always steadied me. Tonight, I needed it more than ever. My phone buzzed at 12:47 a.m. The name on the screen made my chest tighten. Claire. For a moment, I thought about letting it ring, letting her voice disappear into the void like so many unanswered questions. But curiosity, or maybe weakness, won. I pressed accept. Daniel. Her voice was soft, almost fragile, but I knew better than to trust softness from Claire Evans. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. It's late. I couldn't sleep, she admitted. Not after today. Not after you. Her breath hitched like she was searching for the right word. Walked out. The word pawn echoed in my head. I stayed quiet. I only wanted you by my side, she continued, her tone sharper now, rehearsed like a boardroom pitch. That's all I ever wanted, Daniel. You and me, together. Don't you see? It's the only way we both win. Win. I repeated, my laugh bitter. That's what this has been about for you. Winning. She didn't flinch. This world doesn't forgive weakness. Every CEO has a story, a partner, an anchor that makes them untouchable. That was supposed to be you. You make me look stable, Daniel. Reliable. Human. I shut my eyes. The words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were empty. Not love. Not friendship. Image. So all these years, I said slowly, it wasn't about me. It was about what I could do for you. Her silence was enough. Do you even hear yourself, Claire? My voice broke, anger laced with grief. You say you wanted me by your side. But you never wanted me. You wanted my obedience. My silence. My life bent to fit the image you needed. That's not true, she whispered, but her tone faltered for the first time. I care about you, Daniel. I always have. No, I snapped, sitting forward, fists clenched. You care about control. You've been pulling my strings since we were kids, and I was too blind to see it. Well, I see it now. And I'm done. Her voice hardened instantly, steel slipping back into silk. If you walk away from this, from me, you're walking away from everything. Protection. Power. Security. Do you really think your father's dusty little bookstore dream can stand against this world? Against me? The words lit something inside me, something stronger than anger. My father's dream is worth more than your empire, I said, my tone steady. Because it's real. It's mine. And for the first time in my life, I'm going to live it, without you. The line went silent for a heartbeat, then two. I thought I heard her inhale sharply, but before she could speak again, I ended the call. The phone sat face down on the desk, its glow gone, leaving only the quiet hum of the city. I looked back at the ledger, at Dad's notes about book shipments, community readings, the scribbled dreams of a man who believed in stories over power. Claire thought she could own me. I thought she could write me into her script. But this was the moment I chose to tear up the script. This was the moment I vowed to take back my independence. And piece by piece, I'd rebuild my future, not as her pawn, not as her fiancé, not as her performance partner, but as Daniel Wright. The morning began with the smell of coffee and the sound of my phone vibrating non-stop. At first, I thought it was just more fallout from the gala, the tabloids chewing on the scraps of my stormy exit. But when I unlocked the screen, the headlines staring back at me made my blood run cold. Evans Corp absorbs Wright Bookstores, a strategic merger years in the making. Childhood sweethearts to corporate partners, Daniel Wright signs over family legacy. Beneath the headlines was an image of a sleek contract, splashed across every finance site and social feed. My name, my bookstore. And right beside it, Claire's signature, bold and decisive, like a brand stamped on my chest. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the pages, the language clear and damning. Wright Bookstores would become a wholly owned subsidiary of Evans Corporation. I wasn't just losing Dad's dream, I had supposedly given it away. I felt the walls closing in. The phone rang. Lucas's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a shaky breath. "Dan, tell me this isn't true," he said, his voice sharp. "Tell me you didn't just hand Evans Corp the keys to your father's kingdom." "I didn't," I said quickly. "I would never, Lucas, you know I'd never sell Dad's legacy. This is fake. It has to be." "Then why the hell does your signature look so real?" he demanded. "It's everywhere, man. The whole city thinks you sold out. And Evans Corp stock, it's already climbing. Marcus is calling this a visionary alliance." Marcus. The name tasted like venom. But worse than Marcus's smug fingerprints was the other name on that contract, the one I couldn't ignore. Claire Evans. Her signature gleamed right beside mine, neat and ruthless, as if she had been waiting her whole life to put it there. I dropped into the chair by my desk, burying my face in my hands. Images flashed in my head, Claire tugging me into business seminars when we were 12, steering me toward clubs that boosted her image, guiding every step of my life like a puppeteer. I had told myself she cared. That beneath the CEO's polish and the manipulation, there was still the girl I had trusted. But this was proof. If she had signed off on this forged contract, then there was no line she wouldn't cross. Not with Marcus, not with the company, not with me. The screen buzzed again, this time with a text. From Claire. "Daniel, don't believe everything you see. I can explain. Explain how my bookstore, the last living piece of my father, was now a weapon in her corporate war. Explain how her name appeared on the very document being used to bury me alive." I stared at the words until they blurred. The Claire I thought I knew, the Claire I had once called my friend, was gone. Or maybe she had never existed at all. Maybe all along, she had only been the strategist, the girl who groomed me to play my role, the woman who would smile in my face while tightening the chains around me. And Marcus. Marcus was feeding on my pain, turning my bookstore into a bargaining chip, my reputation into a joke. I clenched my fists until my nails bit my palms. No more clinging to illusions. No more hoping Claire cared beneath the games. This forged contract wasn't just a corporate maneuver, it was the final blow to whatever fragile thread tied me to her. The world believed I had sold out, but I knew the truth. I hadn't given away my father's dream. They had tried to steal it. And now, I was done playing their pawn. I spent the next 72 hours in silence. No calls returned. No texts answered. I shut the door to my apartment and buried myself in documents, phone calls, and strategies. If Marcus wanted to smear me as a sellout, if Claire wanted to fold my father's bookstores into her empire, then I'd show them both just how wrong they were. I pulled my lawyers in first. Every contract. Every clause. Tear it apart, I told them. I want proof this merger is a fabrication. They worked like sharks, and while they dug, I began pulling my assets. Accounts, real estate tied to the stores, vendor agreements, anything Claire might think she had leverage over. For years I had trusted her influence, letting her shadow my decisions. But now, every pen stroke, every bank transfer felt like slashing one more string she had wound around me since childhood. By the third day, I was sitting across from 3 investors in a quiet cafe downtown. Men and women who didn't care about Claire's corporate polish or Marcus's smear campaigns. They admired what my father had built, bookstores that weren't just businesses but community hubs, homes for stories. "Evans Corp wants scale," one of them said. "But scale kills identity. Your brand has heritage. That's why we're here. Their words lit something in me. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't reacting, I was moving forward. On my own terms. And then, as if the universe wanted to test my resolve, Claire called. Not once. Not twice. Over 20 missed calls. The final attempt wasn't on the phone, it was in person. Her penthouse door swung open after I pounded on it. She stood there in silk, her hair down in a way that made her look younger, almost like the girl I remembered from before the empire, before the contracts. Daniel, she breathed, relief softening her voice. Finally. You've been avoiding me. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, the whole city glittering beneath her feet. Everything about the place screamed power and isolation. Why did you sign it? I asked flatly. She flinched, just for a second, before slipping the CEO mask back on. The contract was Marcus's play. He forged your part. You only what? I cut her off. My voice echoed against marble floors. You only put your name beside mine because it was convenient. Because having me as your shadow fiancé wasn't enough, you had to take my father's legacy too. Her lips parted, but no words came. I shook my head. I've spent my whole life under your strings, Claire. The clubs, the seminars, even the women you discouraged me from loving, you pulled every thread. And I let you, because I thought there was still something real between us. She stepped closer, her voice quieter now. There is something real. I only wanted you by my side, Daniel. Not Marcus. Not anyone else. You. For a moment, her eyes weren't cold, they were pleading. And I almost believed her. Almost. But then I remembered Marcus's smirk at the gala. The forged contract. My name dragged through headlines. I took a step back. You didn't want me. You wanted my obedience. My silence. My life on your terms. She reached out a hand. Don't do this. I turned away from her touch. It's already done. I've severed the ties. I'm negotiating with investors now, independently. Whatever you think you own, Claire, you don't own me anymore. Silence stretched between us, heavy and final. Then I left, the echo of my footsteps fading down the marble hallway. Outside, the night air hit me like a baptism. For the first time since I was a boy, I felt clean. Untethered. Her penthouse towered above me as I walked away, but it no longer cast a shadow. For once, the path ahead was mine, and mine alone. The incubator didn't look like much from the outside. Just a converted warehouse with peeling brick, graffiti tags, and windows that caught the sun like cracked mirrors. But inside, it was alive, humming with laptop keys, white boards scrawled with ideas, and the kind of caffeine-fueled energy that money couldn't buy. I didn't belong to Evans Corp anymore. I didn't want to. This place, with its raw ambition and smell of burnt coffee, felt more honest than any boardroom I'd ever stepped into. I set up my corner desk with nothing but my laptop and a worn copy of my father's old business plan, the one he'd scribbled in margins in coffee-stained notebooks. His dream had been simple. Bookstores as sanctuaries. My dream was different but rooted in his, a digital literary platform that gave voices space to grow. A bridge between old and new. The first day, I was introduced to Olivia Chen. She was nothing like Claire. No ice, no mask. Olivia had a sharp gaze, yes, but it wasn't calculating. It was alive, curious, always darting to the edges of a problem as if she could dismantle it and rebuild it better. She wore glasses that slid down her nose, and her hair was tied back in a messy bun that said she cared more about ideas than appearances. You're Daniel Wright, she said, shaking my hand with firm confidence. The bookstore heir who walked out on Evans Corporation. I flinched at the phrasing, but she smirked before I could reply. Relax. That's a compliment around here. It means you're not afraid to walk away from the machine. Her words disarmed me. For once, I wasn't being measured by who I was standing beside, or what image I fit into. Olivia was already asking questions. Not about my ties to Claire, but about my vision. What problem are you solving, Daniel? She asked at first meeting, jotting notes as if she were cataloging me into her mental library. I opened my father's notebook. He wanted people to feel like stories belonged to them. I want to take that online, give every bookstore, every reader, every writer a place to connect, share, and preserve the value of books in a world that keeps forgetting them. She nodded slowly, her lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile, but more like respect. That's not just a startup. That's a movement. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, not as Claire's pawn, not as Marcus's joke, but as Daniel Wright. Just Daniel. Days in the incubator blurred together. Olivia became a constant presence, pushing, questioning, refining my ideas until the fog in my head began to clear. We mapped out user experiences, debated revenue models, laughed over broken code and crashed servers. It was exhausting, yes, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Claire's world glimmered in glossy magazine spreads. I couldn't avoid the headlines. Evans Corp CEO dazzles at shareholder gala, Claire Evans and Marcus Hale, corporate titans unite. The photographs showed her flawless smile, Marcus at her side like a shadow that had learned to grin. But the images didn't fool me. I saw the tension in her eyes, the stiffness in her posture. I knew Marcus, knew how he worked in, how he made you think you were in control while he quietly tightened the leash. Still, the world believed the facade. And maybe Claire even believed it, too. One evening, Olivia caught me staring at a magazine cover spread open on my desk. She leaned over, her voice calm but direct. "She doesn't own your story anymore," she said. "Stop letting her ghost write it." I closed the magazine, my fingers trembling slightly. She was right. This wasn't about Claire. Not anymore. It was about me, my father's legacy, and the ground I was finally building for myself. The incubator lights buzzed overhead, and somewhere in the chaos of wires and scribbled whiteboards, I felt something take root. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in someone else's script. I was writing my own. The charity gala was the kind of event my father would have loved. A night dressed up not for profits or portfolios, but for words, for literacy, for libraries, for the promise that books still mattered in a world racing toward screens. I arrived in a modest navy suit. Nothing flashy, nothing to scream for attention. My weapon tonight wasn't image, but voice. My name had started circulating again, not as Evans Corp's shadow, but as the founder of a rising digital literary platform. That was enough. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and glasses of wine held like props. Sponsors laughed too loudly, photographers hovered near the banners. I recognized a dozen faces from the boardrooms I used to sit in, but tonight I felt untethered. And then I saw her, Claire Evans. She entered the room like gravity itself shifted, and everyone turned their heads. A sleek black gown hugged her figure, diamonds at her ears catching the light, but her poise, always her greatest weapon, felt strained tonight. I caught it in the slight tightness of her smile, in the flicker of her eyes scanning the crowd, looking not for admiration but reassurance. Our gazes met. For a heartbeat, time folded. I saw the girl from my childhood, the one who used to tug me toward debate clubs, who laughed when I quoted novels she pretended not to like. But then I blinked, and I only saw the CEO who had signed away my trust on a contract forged by Marcus. She approached like a storm wrapped in silk, and before I could retreat, she was at my side. "Daniel," she whispered, her breath warm near my ear. "I can't lose you." The word struck harder than I expected. For a moment, the years of strings, of manipulation, blurred with something raw in her tone. Was it fear? Desperation? Or just another layer of her control? I stepped back, forcing space between us. "You already did." Her eyes widened, a crack in her carefully rehearsed mask. Before she could respond, the host tapped the microphone, calling me to the stage. My legs carried me forward, the room's eyes following, including hers. Standing at the podium, I adjusted the mic, scanning the crowd of power brokers and philanthropists. I didn't mention Claire. I didn't need to. My father believed bookstores were more than businesses, I began, my voice steady. He believed they were sanctuaries, places where ideas could live and breathe. His dream shaped me, but it's taken me years to realize I have to carry it in my own way. Independence isn't about turning your back on the past. It's about honoring it by building something that lasts. Applause rippled across the hall, polite at first, then swelling. I caught Olivia in the audience, nodding with quiet pride. And beyond her, Claire, still radiant, but her hands clenched, her expression unreadable. For once, I wasn't speaking for her approval. When I stepped down from the stage, I walked past her without pausing. She reached out, as if to grab my arm, but I didn't stop. Her orbit no longer pulled me in. And as the cameras flashed, I realized the story wasn't hers to write anymore. It was mine. Marcus Hale was everywhere. His shadow slithered through boardrooms, whispered in press statements, even crept into the glossy spreads of Claire's interviews. If Evans Corp was a kingdom, Marcus was slowly crowning himself its regent, and Claire, once untouchable, seemed caught in his tightening grip. The headlines began first, Evans Corp to announce strategic realignment, ending rumored partnership with Wright. The subtext was clear. Claire was under pressure to cut me loose completely, to bury the ghost of the fake fiancé scandal. For the first time in months, she came to me. Not as the CEO, not as the immaculate figure in black gowns or power suits, but as Claire Evans, the girl I had grown up with, standing at the edge of my office at the startup incubator. She looked smaller. Her hair pulled back, no makeup, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "Daniel," she said softly. I didn't look up right away. I was seated cross-legged on the floor with 3 young writers, our laptops open, debating story arcs and digital publishing formats. Their passion reminded me of myself at that age, when I scribbled stories in the margins of my father's ledgers. "I'm busy," I said, my tone clipped. But she waited until the others left, until it was just us in the quiet hum of the incubator space. Then she stepped forward, rolling up her sleeve. For a moment, I didn't understand, until I saw it. Thin scars, faint but visible, etched along her wrist. Her voice broke. "Do you have any idea how lonely it is at the top? Daniel, I built everything, everything. So no one could control me again. And now Marcus, he's, her words faltered. She pressed her lips together, shaking her head. The sight of those scars pierced me deeper than any contract, any betrayal. I remembered the girl who used to grip my hand a little too tightly before school debates, the one who secretly hated sleeping alone during thunderstorms. But then her words hardened again, familiar, like iron chains. "I need you back by my side. Not because of Marcus, not because of stockholders. Because you belong there. With me. That's where you've always belonged. Ownership, not partnership. A cage wrapped in velvet." I swallowed the ache in my chest, my voice calm but unyielding. "No, Claire. I don't belong to anyone. My father's dream, these young writers, they don't need a performance. They need someone who believes in them. That's what I'm building. That's who I am." Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. She never cried. Instead, she looked at me as though I had betrayed her. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "When Marcus takes everything, don't say I didn't try." And then she was gone, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor, leaving only the echo of her warning. I sat back down, staring at the blank page on my laptop. Outside, I heard the younger writers laughing about some plot twist in their shared draft, their voices spilling into the room like sunlight. I typed a single line at the top of the page. "Independence is the only story worth writing." And for the first time in years, I felt certain of the ending I was chasing. It was strange, the way the incubator began to feel like home. The air always smelled faintly of coffee and whiteboard markers, the hum of dozens of startups buzzing like a living organism. But within that chaos, my corner of the space, once just a desk with scattered bookstore ledgers, was alive with the sound of collaboration. Olivia Chen sat across from me, her sleeves rolled up, scribbling diagrams on a tablet. "If we position the bookstore as more than nostalgia," she said, eyes bright, "if we frame it as heritage evolving, then people aren't just buying books. They're buying into a legacy." Legacy. That word hit me like a bell. My father's old shelves, his ink-stained fingers, the weight of his journals, alive again in a digital world I never thought I'd build. The younger writers I mentored had become regulars too. They spilled into meetings with their half-finished manuscripts, their laughter sharp and unrestrained. One of them, Ellie, had never spoken up in school, but now she rattled off pitches for serialized fiction like she'd been waiting her whole life to be heard. It was messy, imperfect, and human. And it was mine. The press began to take notice. Articles shifted from "CEO's fake fiancé" to "Wright's digital book hub raises record seed round." Investors weren't calling me Claire's accessory anymore. They were calling me founder. One evening, Olivia leaned against the window overlooking the city. The skyline glittered, cold and sharp, Evans Corp's tower rising like a spear among the lights. She caught me staring at it. "She's losing ground," Olivia said simply. I raised a brow. "Marcus has been pushing her into corners," she explained. "Board members are leaking. He's framing her as volatile, unstable. And the worst part? She can't stop him. Not anymore." I didn't respond right away. My gut tightened, remembering Claire's hollow eyes, her scars, the desperation in her voice. A part of me wanted to reach back, to pull her out of Marcus's web. But then Ellie burst into the room, waving her manuscript like a flag. Daniel. Olivia. I just hit 10,000 subscribers on the platform. Her joy lit up the room, washing away the shadows of Evans Corporation. I smiled, clapping her shoulder. See? That's what this is about. Not their boardrooms. Not their games. This. My circle wasn't made of contracts, power plays, or hidden diaries. It was built on stories, on belief, on people who wanted to create rather than control. I leaned back in my chair, letting the sound of their voices wash over me. For years I thought I was trapped in Claire's orbit, her strings knotted too tightly around my life to ever escape. But now, for the first time, I felt free, not alone, but surrounded by a family I chose. And as Evans Corp's tower loomed in the distance, I realized something that made my pulse steady with quiet defiance. Claire had her empire. Marcus had his schemes. But I had my circle. And it was enough. The bookstore smelled of polished wood and fresh ink again. After months of renovations, my father's shelves stood taller than ever, stacked not only with paperbacks and hardcovers but also with screen streaming live readings from authors around the world. It wasn't just a bookstore anymore, it was a bridge between past and future. My father's dream, reborn through my own hands. The relaunch event buzzed with energy. Young writers signed copies of their first published works, children flipped through picture books in the corner, and Olivia guided reporters through a demo of the digital platform. It was everything I had hoped for, a place that pulsed with stories, not stock prices. Then she walked in. Claire Evans. Even now, she could command a room with a single step. The tailored dress, the diamond earrings, the hair pulled into a perfect sweep, all armor. But tonight, her eyes betrayed her. They weren't the sharp, cutting eyes of the CEO who had once scripted my life. They were tired, almost pleading. The crowd parted instinctively, whispers trailing behind her as she approached. I felt every gaze shift between us, the fallen queen and the man she once claimed as her fiancé. Daniel, she said softly, voice trembling just enough to make my chest tighten. Can we talk? I led her toward the quieter end of the shop, by my father's old desk. The wood was worn, scarred from years of his work, but I loved those imperfections. They were honest. Claire's gaze swept the room, lingering on the writers, the families, the laughter that filled the air. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her face, envy, maybe. Or regret. This is beautiful, she admitted. You did this without me. I didn't answer. She turned back to me, and the mask cracked. Marcus is forcing me out. He's already got half the board. They're calling emergency meetings behind my back. Her voice wavered, desperate now. I don't have anyone left. But you've always been there. You've always understood me. She stepped closer, her perfume sharp, familiar, suffocating. Can we start over, Daniel? Not as a scheme, not as a contract. Just, you and me. I can't lose you. For a second, her vulnerability dug at me. Memories of childhood laughter, late-night study sessions, and moments where I thought our bond was real whispered in the back of my mind. But then I looked around again, at Olivia beaming while Ellie explained her book to a stranger, at the kids sitting cross-legged with their parents, at the light pouring across shelves built by my father's hands. And I knew. I wasn't the boy Claire had groomed, nor the pawn she tried to own. I wasn't her lifeline. I'm sorry, Claire, I said quietly, but firmly. You don't want me. You want what I represent, someone to hold you up, to keep you from falling. That's not a partnership. That's captivity. Her face tightened, the gloss of her lipstick trembling at the edges. So you're just going to abandon me? After everything? I shook my head. No. I'm freeing myself. And maybe, if you want to survive, you need to learn how to stand without pulling someone else's strings. The silence between us was heavy. For the first time, she looked small. Not the CEO, not the manipulator, not the girl with a plan. Just Claire. And then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the wooden floor, fading beneath the weight of the crowd's chatter. I exhaled, slow and steady. I didn't feel victorious. I felt released. As Olivia caught my eye across the room and smiled, I realized the truth. Claire had been my past. But this was my future. The store was alive again. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, stretching across rows of shelves that hummed with quiet conversations and rustling pages. Children darted between displays, their laughter mixing with the soft voice of an author reading her debut novel in the corner. A group of students huddled at the digital hub, watching a live stream workshop from a writer halfway across the world. My father's dream. My dream. Not polished into a glossy corporate pitch, not dressed up as a PR stunt, but real, breathing, and mine. I walked slowly down the aisles, fingertips brushing spines I had personally chosen. The classics my father loved sat beside new voices I believed in. For the first time, I wasn't just keeping his legacy alive, I was building on it. Adding my own chapter to the story. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was. Claire. Her name glowed on the screen, another message stacked on the dozens I hadn't opened. Sometimes it was a plea. Sometimes an apology. Sometimes anger. They all blurred together now, words I didn't need to read to understand. I slipped the phone back into my jacket. No reply. Not anymore. Because Claire had plotted my life since the moment we were kids, pulling strings, cutting paths, shaping me into a partner I never chose to be. For years, I thought that was loyalty. I thought giving in was love. But it wasn't. It was a cage. Breaking free wasn't easy. It was messy, painful, humiliating at times. But as I stood there, surrounded by readers lost in their own stories, I knew the truth. I had finally found my own. No contracts. No strings. No false titles like fake fiancé. Just me, Daniel Wright, carrying forward a legacy on my terms. Olivia appeared from the back, arms full of new books for display. She caught my eye, and her smile was the kind that didn't demand anything from me. It just welcomed me forward. I smiled back. For the first time in a long time, I felt light, free. Claire's shadow no longer held me. And as the day stretched on and the store thrummed with life, I realized something simple but profound. The greatest plot twist of all wasn't hers. It was mine.